Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. Daenerys. Ser Aemon stood watch at the doorway to the room, keeping an eye out for any other men that meant to kill Daenerys. He fought the two in the room, but there were echoes of fighting emanating from the halls. The floor was stained with the blood of Varys and the faceless man where they once lay. Their bodies and those of the men who attacked were laid aside and covered with a sheet covered in spots of blood. But while Ser Aemon stood watch, Daenerys lay in Sansa's bed, breathing steadily as the pains of her contractions would come and go. They began hours before the attack, only minor tugs within her, but she paid no heed to them. She was unconscious the first time she gave birth and never experienced these sensations before, not knowing that these were signs of labor. Bit ironic, isn't it? Ser Aemon mentioned. What is? Daenerys breathed. I was alone with Aerys when I killed him, and now I'm alone with his daughter, trying to keep her alive. In truth, the thought had occurred to her. Though if I was with the king instead of you, then history would have repeated itself. What? Your mother asked for me to go with her to Dragonstone before you were born. Believe me, I wanted to go. Anywhere was better than King's Landing. But Aerys wouldn't allow it. You must have a soft spot for pregnant Targaryen women. Ser Aemon laughed a little. Rosiera was my friend, one of the few I had besides Rhaegar in the capital. I promised to die for her if things ever came to that. Daenerys was never aware of the devotion Ser Aemon had for her mother. And yet you tried to kill her daughter with a spear. What's the phrase you like to use? I am not my father. How should I have known that when you led a horde of Dothraki with a dragon and burned my men alive? I thought you were Aerys returned from the grave. But when you saw me, for that brief moment, I hesitated. Why? Her breath left her as another shot of pain rolled over her body. Because I thought I was looking at Rhaegar here, and I thought perhaps, what if you weren't your father, but your mother? She sometimes did have a fiery side that Aerys never saw. And then, of course, there was the dragon about to breathe fire at me. Daenerys was more than surprised to hear these things from Ser Aemon. Ser Barristan hardly mentioned anything about her mother, as did Viserys. The memory of her made both of them sad. She couldn't help but be amused that the one who spoke most of her mother was the man who killed her father. Life is strange that way. Yesterday's enemies are today's allies and friends. Yes, but how long until today's friends are tomorrow's enemies? Daenerys tensed as the felt her body tightened again, this one hurting the most. Though, that was a big one. She noticed Ser Aemon backing into the room slowly, holding his sword aside as a low growl was heard, and the large white direwolf that was Ghost entered, baring his teeth at Ser Aemon. Easy, Ser Aemon said. I'm not your enemy. Ghost! Daenerys called. Don't hurt him. He's a friend. He's protecting me. Immediately Ghost calmed down and trotted over to her, whining half the time. I'm all right, Ghost. She reached out and nuzzled his snout. Where is everyone? Why isn't anyone else here to help? Daenerys asked. I don't know, Ser Aemon replied. Maybe the wildfire cut off the way here, or the enemy is doing that. Ser Aemon was proven wrong when two people and a child appear in the doorway. You see, Gilly? Sam asked. I knew Ghost wouldn't let us down. He was reassuring her, but he looked just as terrified as Gilly. But he's wearing the lions on his armor, Gilly pointed out to Ser Aemon. Her child, little Sam, was looking around the room curiously. You can trust him, Daenerys told them. Ser Aemon has been protecting me. Sam and Gilly were hesitant to enter, but once they saw that Ghost was being tamed, they were relieved. Behind them were two of the Winterfell guard. They entered after Sam and Gilly. Your Grace, one of them said, we were sent by Lord Brandon to help how we can. Finally, a bit of luck, but Daenerys was still surprised to hear who sent them. Bran's woken up? He has, Your Grace. One of the men said. Unlike his partner, who was dressed in the boiled leather armor that the majority of northern bannermen wore, this man wore a simple chainmail under his heavy jerkin and murky-colored clothes. His cloak was tied with a darkened pin of 3 water lilies. What are your names? The one in leather spoke first. Michael, Your Grace. Lonol Fen, Your Grace. Michael Lonol, Daenerys spoke. I thank you for your valor and efforts today. But the fighting is not over. Defend this room with your lives. They both bowed their heads and took to different directions in the halls to keep watch. Ghost, the direwolf perked his head up at the sound of his name. I need Jon. Go get Jon for me, please. Ghost rushed out of the room as fast as he could and down the hallway out of sight. Are you sure sending the wolf off was a good idea? This time the pain wasn't from a contraction, but something else that hurt far more. Sorry, Jaime rushed to her side and helped adjust her position on the bed. Breathe. Keep breathing. He brought Sam here, and how else were we going to get help? Ghost is a smart wolf. Sir Jaime chuckled. I'll take a vicious wolf over smart in this situation. She's about to birth her children, Gilly noted. Really? What gave it away? Sir Jaime remarked snidely. Shut up, Jaime! Daenerys hissed. She wasn't in any mood for any sass. If Tyrion were giving a lecture about something right now, she might have strangled him for it. But at least she would know that he was here. Last she knew, he went to the Godswood to speak with Jon and Ser Davos, but who knows what could have happened. She worried about him, she worried about Jon and Missandei, and everyone else she cared for. I can help. I helped all my sisters give birth since I was 9. Daenerys remembered what Jon told her about Gilly being a daughter and wife to her own father, Craster, the Wildling. The damned man sacrificed his own sons to the White Walkers. But like herself, Gilly was nothing like her father. Daenerys nodded. Help me take my leggings off. Gilly set down little Sam with his father to assist her. More red cloaks are coming, Lonal Fenn called out from the hallway. Sir Aemon set his sword aside for a moment to hand one of the swords of the first intruders to Sam. Do what you can if we die, he told Sam before rushing into the hallway with the Northmen. Stay away. The sounds of steel were very close as Sir Aemon engaged the enemy. Daenerys moaned in pain as she felt the beginnings of another contraction. How is it looking? She had to push the words out of her mouth before she screamed. She was holding in as much as she could. You need to start pushing, Gilly told her. It looks like you've been ready for a while now. She folded Daenerys' leggings and set them aside. After that, she helped Daenerys sit more upright for the birth. No, I can't, not yet. She ground her teeth together as the pain worsened. My lady, you're more than ready. You need to start pushing. I can't do this without Jon. He needs to be here, she screamed out again as her insides were shot with pain. He needs to be here, she whimpered. Jon was the one who proved her wrong about her curse. Until the knowledge of his legitimate birth, he never planned to father children, a curse of his own making. He was the one who gave both himself and her a future. He needed to be here to see their family brought into the world. If you don't do it now, then your children may die, Gilly informed. They're ready, and so are you. Delaying it will only make it worse. She took Daenerys' hand in her own. Jon will be more happy to see his family alive than seeing you birth your children and dying. It's going to be all right. Daenerys couldn't help but still feel some doubt within her. This may be the only chance they have for a future, and she didn't want Jon to miss it. But she wanted that future to be alive more than that. She shut her eyes closed, pushed with every ounce of strength she had, and screamed out. This moment was excruciating and seemed to be the longest minute of her life. Her waist was burning like she never felt before and her head throbbing with pain. But all of it disappeared when a baby's cry broke through her screams. Daenerys gasped for breath and did everything she could to look up. Cradled in Gilly's arms was a newborn babe, red-skinned and crying loud for all the world to hear. A boy, Gilly said with a smile. He's so beautiful. Daenerys never saw anything as precious as her dragons until now. She wanted to reach out and touch her son, but the sight of one clamoring armor interrupted her thoughts. She hoped that it was someone coming to help. Anyone. Daenerys took a deep breath before she began to push a secondess. This one was harder to do. She felt so weak after birthing Matthias, she wasn't sure if she had the strength left. She must do what she could and let out a roar as loud as her dragons. She would not fail today. She would not fail her children. The pain dispersed and was replaced by another cry of a baby. Gilly had given Matthias to Sam to take care while she took the next into her arms. Another boy. This one has your hair. But her hopes were killed when more men in Lannister armor appeared. Why aren't you fucking dead yet? One of them shouted, Saudin, shoving his way past Sir Ajim, while beating Lannister's Fen with the pommel of his sword. This man was absolutely determined to get to her. He slipped past the two in his way and was nearly free to run straight inside. Please don't kill my children, Daenerys begged. Please. Fuck you and your cheek. The one talking was interrupted when a dagger was driven in his neck by Lano. One of the other loyalists with him in the back was tackled by Ghost, and another killed with a single swing of Jon's sword. He switched to fighting the last of the men, but this one was an experienced fighter. "Stay away from my family." Kicking the man square in the chest, Jon made him fall to the ground. Before the loyalist had any chance to get up, Ghost barked out and leaped on top of him, ripping through his throat. Jon sighed out and looked exhausted. His black sword nearly slipped from his fingers as he relaxed. "Is that the last of them?" "I think so, Your Grace." Brienne's voice said. She was just out of sight. "Are you all right, Sir Raime?" Daenerys could hear Sir Raime's voice. "It's nothing too serious. Luckily the wound is on my handless arm. Sir Jaime, I will never forget what you've done today." "I appreciate the gesture, but I think there's someone more important than me. You should be seeing to right now." Jon turned his head and peered into the room, shocked at what he saw. "Daenerys!" Jon rushed into the room and beheld her lying comfortably in the bed, but covered in sweat. He leaned his blood-covered sword against the end of the bed before he knelt down to the bedside to see her. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner." "Jon," Daenerys cocked her head to Gilly and enjoyed the look that came upon his face when he saw their firstborn being cared for. "Say hello to our sons." "They... I..." He was at a loss for words and on the verge of tears. "Thank you, Dainty." Gilly gently handed Matthias into Daenerys' arms after wrapping him in a blanket. The moment she took him, Matthias' cries softened into tiny little noises. His eyes would blink open and closed periodically, but every time they did, she caught sight of a beautiful blue color. No doubt it would change as he grew, as most eye colors did for babies. Daenerys couldn't stop smiling as she ran her thumb over her son's cheek, feeling the softness of his skin. This was when she knew that this was truly not a dream. Her son was with her now, in her arms. "Hello, Matthias," she whispered. "I've been waiting to meet you for a long time." "Don't forget about his brother," Gilly said after she finished wiping Aemon clean of Daenerys' fluids and wrapped him in his own blanket. Daenerys took him in her other arm and held both of her children. His silver hair was barely noticeable. "Aemon, he's so handsome." Daenerys giggled as she gave Matthias to his father. "Jon, you're a father." Jon merely looked at Matthias as much as he could, taking in every little detail. "I'm a father." He broke into a smile and gently kissed his son on his brow. "You should try to feed them now," Gilly informed. "Boys are usually hungrier than girls. First, let's get a clean blanket for the bed." It wasn't until Jon said that Daenerys realized how stained her blanket was with the waters from within her. Sam was kind enough to assist Gilly by helping her. Now lying comfortably in the bed with a warm fur blanket, Daenerys, with Gilly's help, managed to latch her babies onto her breasts. She started to calm down as they suckled on her. Jon pulled the covers over her so that she wasn't exposing herself to all attending to her. "Do you need anything?" Jon asked. "An extra blanket? Water? Anything?" While relaxing would be nice right now, Daenerys couldn't forget that there may be hundreds of the dead within and without the castle. "I'll be all right for now. The best thing to do right now is to gather the dead." Jon turned his gaze to the covered bodies in the corner, then saw Sergei leaning on the doorframe next to Lady Brienne. "Aye, but get your wound taken care of first. Brienne, see to it that Sir Jaime is taken care of. When he is, I wish to speak with the two of you and Podrick." "At once, Your Grace." Brienne took her leave with Sir Jaime as Sir Jorah and Sir Cole arrived. "Khaleesi, we came as fast as we..." Sir Jorah fumbled in his words when he saw her in the bed with two tiny heads poking up into sight. "Are those..." "Sir Jorah, Sir Cole, allow me to introduce you to the Princes Matthias and Aemon of House Targaryen." They were still feeding, so she couldn't reveal them yet. "Where is Sir Lormes?" "He fell in the courtyard protecting the king." Sir Jorah approached her side and knelt before her. "Are you feeling well?" "Just tired is all," Daenerys replied. "But besides that, never better." Jorah looked relieved to hear that. "On my life, I will do everything in my power to protect your sons, the princes. I swear to it as a Mormon of Bear Island." Daenerys felt her heart warmed when Jorah said that he always such a devotion to her. Even after his confession of his love for her in Vaes Dothrak, even though he knew she would never be his, he continued to love her knowing it could not be returned in such. The sensation of her babes suckling at her left her, and Daenerys noticed that both of them had finished their meal. She managed to conceal herself, and then revealed her babes to those who had come to the room. "Would you like to hold one of them?" she asked. Jorah looked surprised by the offer. Are you sure, Khaleesi? She smiled at him. I would be glad if you would. Jorah removed his blood-stained gloves and took Aemon into his arms. Silver hair of his mother, face like his father. He smiled down at the babe. He'll be a strong lad. He glanced over at Matthias, continuing, they both will be, the little dragon wolves. Then he returned Aemon to Daenerys and stood up. With your permission and the king's, Sericol and I are going to the camps to assist how we can. Many of tents were set afire, and there may be more loyalists concealing themselves. You will not go by yourselves, I should hope. Find Ashpal and organize the Unsullied to secure the castle and take who you need with you into the camps. By your command, my queen. Ser Sericol swiftly left the room to go take care of business. We should organize gathering the dead as well, Jon reminded as he looked down at the covered corpses in the room. First, I need to be sure that Lord Tyrion and those in our service are all right. The thought especially of Missandei possibly being dead scared her. She was one of the few left alive she could call friend. And what about your family, Jon? Arya was with me in the courtyard. Bran is with Mir Reed, but Sansa and Rickon. I'm not sure where they are. He turned to some of the men in the hallway. Find the Lord of Winterfell and Lady Sansa and bring them here. As of now, this is probably the safest part of the castle. At once, your grace, Lonel Fenn replied, taking some of the men with him while a few remained to guard the room. The babies should be bathed now, Gilly told her. I can do it while you rest. One of the men in the room stepped forward. I'll fetch some water for the babes, your grace. He left immediately. Daenerys could feel her body was exhausted after performing the task of birth. She felt the desires of sleep, but at the same time she felt afraid to let herself. Jon somehow sensed this from her and came to her side. What's wrong? I'm afraid that if I fall asleep, this will all have been just a dream, and our children will be taken from me. I don't want to lose my children again. Jon removed one of the gloves he was wearing and took her hand in his. This isn't a dream, and I won't let anyone or any damned curse or gods take our sons from us. We're right here with you. Daenerys looked down to her sons and saw they were both sound asleep, tuckered out from their meal. She kissed both of them on their warm cheeks and gave a nod to Gilly and Matthias to Jon. Promise me, Jon. Promise me you'll still be here when I wake up. I promise, Dany. Daenerys lay her head on the soft pillow and let her eyes fall over her, drifting away into a blissful sleep, hoping that it wouldn't be too long. She didn't want to wait to hold her children in her arms again. Jon, saying that the day was chaotic was an understatement. Nearly 100 people died within the walls of the castle amidst the wildfire and fighting, and nearly the same amount were killed in the camps. Had the Dornish armies and Dothraki not reacted as fast as they did, then hundreds more would have been killed, maybe 1,000. But there were still casualties among the ranks of soldiers, and even the families of great houses. The Brackens lost their heir. Lady Ramona Dondarrion succumbed to a wound she took, and now her 6-year-old son was to inherit the rule of House Dondarrion. Many were grieving for their losses, while others were plotting for revenge. Those who wore the Lannister colors and were smart or had no part in this plot had thrown down their weapons and fell to their knees. But even then, there were some who could not escape the wrath of those that were angered. In the castle grounds, it took about an hour to douse the wretched green flames of the wildfire. The explosions didn't cripple the castle, but there were many important parts that were destroyed. The forges and all the materials, including some Valyrian steel weapons and armor being made, were destroyed. There were about 50 men in the armory to take up arms against the loyalists when the second explosion happened. All the food in the storerooms was burned into ash, and there were few in the Great Hall when the explosion that destroyed half of the Great Keep went off. The amount of death and destruction was minuscule to the war with the Night King, and yet things were far worse. There was turmoil in the camps. Many were still suffering from injuries. Cersei failed to have House Targaryen eradicated, but she succeeded in making things go beyond control. But in the chaos, there were some moments of joy. Bran had woken and was back to being Bran, according to him, and Daenerys safely birthed Matthias and Aemon. The Lord's chambers were cleaned of the dead by now. Varys' body was taken to be prepared for his and many others' burials. Some of the servants who survived brought the unused ironwood crib for the babies, thought it was meant for one. It was big enough to fit both of the twins in it. They slept quietly during the wait for the Starks and Tyrion and Missandei to come. Sam and Gilly took little Sam to another room with protection from Tarly Bannerman. Sansa and Rickon were brought by some of the guards. In Sansa's arms was a babe he only saw once but recognized as Arthur Dayne. Jon embraced his siblings when he saw them, relieved that they were safe. Accompanying them were the Dayne children. Sansa had been looking after them and protecting them how she could. Jon knelt down to little Asea and little Geralt, both of them still mortified by the death of their mother and the attack. "Are you two hurt?" "No." Asherah sniffed and wiped her tears away. "Are you the Dragon King?" I am the king." "My name's Jon. What's yours?" "Asherah Dayne." "Where's Papa?" "Your Papa got hurt fighting off the bad people, but he'll be all right. I promise. But you're gonna stay here until it's safe. All right?" Asherah nodded and clung to Sansa's dress. Jon smiled warmly at her and looked behind him. "Do you see Ghost? He's going to keep you safe too." Asherah finally showed a small smile, happy to see the direwolf. Jon stood up facing Sansa. "I'll have the other crib brought in for Arthur. He can rest with the other babes." "Other babes?" Sansa asked. Jon smirked as he cocked his head back to the crib with his sons. Sansa and Rickon both became surprised and amazed. They both walked over and beheld the sons of Jon and Daenerys. "They're wonderful," Sansa said. "And so pink," Rickon commented. Sansa turned to Jon, smiling at him. "Father would be proud of you." "Thank you, Sansa." Ashar and Jarl stayed together and ended up falling asleep, up against Ghost on the floor. Sansa took a seat near them while waiting for the other crib for Arthur to be brought. Rickon kept looking Jon's children, amazed. When the crib was brought, one of the guards informed that Bran was going to be with Meera for quite some time until his presence with Jon was a necessity. Tyrion had taken shelter in the Godswood with Ser Davos and was saved by Bronn, Arya, and Gendry. He and Davos had come and all had relief that both Jon and Daenerys and their children were safe while Gendry and Arya were needed elsewhere for now. Davos sat with Sansa, ready to help with the Dayne children since he had experience as a father, while Tyrion took to talking with Jon. Jon was sitting in a chair next to the crib his children slept in, unable to take his gaze away. He never adored something so much in his life before. This was all something new to him. Something terrifying and at the same time calming. "Is she hurt in any way?" Tyrion asked, looking at Daenerys. "Just tired," Jon replied. "She's earned the rest." "I agree, but with everything going to she..." Tyrion glanced over to the Dayne children and back. "Going very badly. Her presence will be needed soon, as will yours. Everyone will be looking to you for command and guidance, and many who suffered will be seeking your approval for vengeance. I'm not letting revenge be disguised as vengeance. There will be justice for those lost today, but I will not butcher men without a trial." Jon took a deep breath as he gathered his thoughts. "I will give them one chance, and one chance only." "May I ask how?" Jon sighed as he shook his head. "I'm still working on that." At this time, the door to the room opened, and Miss Ierne rushed inside with Kivnal. She looked terrified at first when she saw Daenerys in the bed. "Your Grace." "Shh," Jon shushed calmly. "She's fine, just resting." He gestured a hand to the crib with the babies in it. Miss Ingzarai turned into wonder and joy when she approached them in marvel. Miss Sandy turned to Jon and Tyrion. "They're beautiful. Congratulations, Your Grace." "Thank you." Jon got up from his seat and offered it to her. "I have some things I need to take care of now. I would like my wife to wake up to her friends with her if I am not back by then." Miss India smiled at him and sat with Tyrion. "Are you all right, my lady?" Tyrion asked. "Just fine, Lord Tyrion," Miss India replied. Jon retrieved his sword belt and tied it around him. "Ser Davos." "Yes?" "Send word to all the lords and ladies that we will all be gathering in the meeting hall tonight." "Yes, Your Grace." Before leaving, Jon took another look at his sons sleeping in their crib. He then approached Daenerys and gave her a light kiss on her brow. "I'll be back as soon as I can." He made for the door. "Kano, come with me." "Ghost, stay." With Ser Jorah and Ser Cole indisposed with their duties, Jon would still need a guard as a precaution. Kano nodded and followed Jon out of the room, while Ghost remained, watching over those inside. They went to the room Sam and Gilly were in to make sure they were all right. Sam was free of injuries as far as Jon saw when he first saw him, but he looked distraught at something, most likely the death of his sister. Checking on his friend was the least Jon could do for him since he stood vigil to Daenerys in labor. The Tarly Battermen stood at attention when they caught sight of Jon and Kono approaching. Giving a couple of knocks first, Jon called through the door. "Sam, may I come in?" He could hear what sounded like recovery from crying. "Yes, one moment," Sam replied. It didn't take long until the door opened. Gilly was the one who opened it and allowed Jon and Cato inside. Sam was sitting on a bed, his eyes red from tears. Jon was the first to see Sam's sister's dead body and witnessed when Melissa Tarley had broken down in front of everyone at the sight. Sam didn't cry then, but he was now, and no one could blame him for it. "I'm sorry about Tala, Sam. I never thought something like this would have happened. Is you going to be all right?" Sam shook his head as his eyes fell to the ground. "My mother's dead, Jon. I only left her alone for a few minutes, and when I returned, someone had cut her throat like Tala." Jon felt like someone stabbed a knife in his chest again. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." "Your Grace," Lord Royce appeared in the doorway, one hand resting on the hilt of his sword and the other over his heart. "Thank the Seven you are all right. I and many others feared the worst when we couldn't find you." Jon nodded assuredly to Lord Royce. "I'm all right, if you could give me a minute." "Jon, I want to be left alone if I could," Sam muttered. Jon turned to Sam and could see that he was in a state of utter misery. He didn't want to leave a man he would call his brother alone to weep and mope, but one look from Gilly told him that she would be all Sam needed for now. Jon nodded and went to leave, but glanced at Gilly before he did. "Thank you for help, my wife. If there's anything I can do, let me know." Gilly smiled. "Thank you, Jon." She closed the door behind Jon and Chua. He didn't want to leave Sam, but maybe it was for the best. Sometimes being alone is all a person needed. But if anyone could help Sam feel better, it was Gilly. "Forgive me for interrupting, Your Grace," Lord Royce said. "It's all right. Do you have anything to report on of the condition of the camps and the Lannister bannermen?" "The attacks have ceased, and the Dornish combined with the Riverlands, the Vale, and Dothraki have surrounded the entirety of the Westerland armies and any others sworn to Cersei. Their arms and armor have been confiscated and have not a single man have a chance to even pick his nose without someone noticing. The dragons are causing a bit of unrest and fear among many. Remarkably, though, they are keeping their distance. It seems a little unnatural after witnessing what I have about them." "Something, or rather someone, was keeping them at bay." "Who led the counter-defense?" "I and several others did. Your Grace." "I'll not let your valor and loyalty be forgotten, Lord Royce. Keep them under confinement for now, but round up all the lords and generals to stand trial." "A wise decision. May I inquire about the Queen's condition? We've heard that many tried to kill her, but failed." Jon couldn't contain a bit of a smirk. "She's resting from the birth, my lord." The birth. It took Lord Royce a moment before he finally realized the obvious. "My sincerest congratulations, Your Grace. Such a thing will help bring some light to repel all the dismay and sadness today. Also, you should know that the Lord and Lady Baratheon are in need of you for an urgent matter." "Thank you, my lord." Things were calming down now. Enough so that Jon felt he wouldn't need protection as much as he assumed. "Kuno, go with Lord Royce. Gather enough Dothray to make sure the captives won't pose a threat." Kuno bowed his head and followed after Lord Royce. Now alone, Jon took his leave from inside the castle to the outside. He needed a moment to contemplate all that was happening. He walked along the walls, looking at the destruction that occurred within and without the castle. He leaned his fists on the battlements and gazed out to the last of the smoke that remained after dousing the tents that were lit aflame. He felt his fists tighten as the anger arose within him. He was sick of the fighting, sick of the betrayals, the backstabbing, and the plotting. Tired of the wars. He wondered if when all of it was over, regardless of whoever won the war for the Iron Throne, would it end there? If he could have his way, he wouldn't have another battle. He would have thousands more die for victory, just one. The idea Davos had before all of this happened was something Jon was torn between saying yes and saying no. He would not have Cersei murdered in the night. He wouldn't stoop to her level. But if he didn't, then even if he came out on top of this war at the cost of the city, he would still lose. Jon felt stuck. He couldn't wait any longer for this to end. He had to act as soon as he could. But at the same time, he wasn't sure if he could. Cersei only had an army the third the size of his. The Dothraki alone would be enough. But if he marched every abled soldier to King's Landing, would it remain, or would Cersei destroy it all because she isn't willing to accept an honorable end? Then again, her having a shred of desire for any kind of honor was ridiculous. She was a mad queen, the mad queen. If this was going to be her end, she would make sure it would not be forgotten. It would be a death so great it would be legendary. He needed guidance, but from the right person. He wished his father was here to help him. He wished Maester Aemon could provide the words he needed like he always did. Jon knew he had to do the right thing. He just wasn't sure what that was right now. His thoughts were broken when a crier called out to all who could hear in the courtyard. Hear ye! Hear ye! On this day of winter, the Queen Daenerys of the House Targaryen has given birth. We welcome the twin princes, Matthias Targaryen, the first of his name, and Aemon Targaryen, the first of his name. Long live the heirs to the crown! After the man had announced that, suddenly the mood had instantly shifted. There was hope in the eyes of the people again. Hope that things would get better. Jon longed for this to last. He would do everything he could to keep that hope there. I never thought it was possible for you to smile when you brood, Araja said as she approached. How are you feeling? A bit of everything, I think, Jon replied. So many things have been happening today, and it's not even evening yet. You? Same, I suppose. Right now, I want nothing more than to burn Cersei alive in wildfire. Give her a taste of what she loves doing these days. At the same time, I can't wait to go see your babies. She looked back to the castle, and together they observed at the destruction that happened. There were areas of the stone foundation that was not just destroyed by the wildfire, but melted like candle wax. Why is it that everyone wants to keep destroying our home? Perhaps it's Winterfell's age, she suggested. When he gave her a confused look, she explained. Well, it is the oldest of the castles in Westeros. Perhaps they feel we are in need of some newness. But then she ended the joke with an impish grin. Jon couldn't help himself as he pulled Arya into his arms and hugged her. She could have died today. Any one of his siblings or family could have, but they didn't. It only made things worse of what he had to ask of her soon. I was told you and Gendry had something important to tell me. He's waiting for us at the Godswood. Jon followed his sister to the entrance, but that was as far as they went. Gendry was waiting there for them. You wanted to see me, Jon asked. The Valyrian swords I forged are gone. Destroyed in the explosion with the forges. Is there any chances more can be made soon? No, they weren't destroyed in the wildfire. They were gone. If they melted, I would have found molten metal. Where they were like, I did some of the other weapons, but there was nothing. A dozen Sarg are gone. I think they might have been stolen before the attack. You think? Jon stated. Are you sure they weren't moved? The only work I didn't have kept in the forges was the rest of your armor. I've had it put in your room this morning. And then there were 2 swords I made put aside in Tyrion's room just before the fighting started. And then my new hammer. Gendry moved his cloak and lifted up a massive warhammer. The design was similar to his original, but he had his own sigil on it in polished brass, and the rest of the head was made entirely of Valyrian steel. Because of that, the head was also larger than normal, but his hammers were already larger than normal, to begin with. Besides them, nothing else of what I or the other smiths have made has left the forge. But I figured the best way to find out was to ask Bran if he could see what happened. Then why do you need me? If they were stolen, I'll need help taking them back. I've never let anyone steal from me in King's Landing, and I'm not gonna let that happen here either. Gendry marched into the Godswood with Arya and Jon following after him. He's starting to show his temper, Jon commented to Arya. Well, he is a Baratheon, Arya reminded. Jon, Arya, and Gendry approached the weirwood slowly but stopped. When he noticed Bran with Meera Reed, they talking with each other. Bran saying what he could to comfort Meera during her time of loss. In a sense, Jon envied her. She got to hear her father say goodbye to her. He never had that privilege with either of his nor his mother. Meera noticed them and excused herself. Before she passed them, Jon stopped her. Meera, I'm sorry that your father died that way. Don't worry, she told him. He died smiling at me. She continued onward and left the 3 of them alone with Bran. Shouldn't be resting in bed, Jon asked. I've been resting for too long, Bran said with an upset expression. If I had only been awake, I could have stopped this happening. I could have saved them all. He was getting more frustrated with himself, which surprised Jon. What happened to you? You used to be a dead man, had more attitude than you. But now you're reminding me that you are a person again. Bran chuckled as he shook his head. If I could remember, I'd tell you. But know that I'm Bran again. Not just the 3-eyed raven. I never really understood it that much in the first place, but maybe it's for the best. Yes, it is. I saw your sons. I can see them now. They look just like you did as a baby. I'm happy for you, and Daenerys, truly. But congratulations, and small talk. What are here for, is it? No, we need your help. Jon turned to Gendry. The Valyrian swords I was working on are missing from the forge, and I'm certain that they weren't destroyed. I think they might have been stolen. Brain seemed to look out in the distance at nothing. His facial expression kept changing, as if he was having a conversation in his mind. You're right, they were stolen before the wildfire was set off. The thieves who took them are bannermen of Ser Devon Lannister. They're taking them to Cersei. Damn it, Gendry shouted. How far away are they? 20 miles from here, you can't catch them. I can, Jon said. I'll take Rhaegal and intercept them. Can you show the way? Bran nodded. I'll lead you with my flock of ravens. You'd best hurry. I don't think there's a horse that can outrun a dragon. I wasn't talking about them. Brain looked concerned. The dragons are growing angry, so much I don't think have a chance to keep them at bay. You need to go and calm them. Another thing to worry about. Jon turned to leave, but then he had an epiphany. Brain, tonight, the lords of the Westerlands are going to be brought before the lords of Westeros, and I need to know which ones we're involved with today. Can you help me with that? Yes, of course, Bran said, agitated. Now go. Jon cracked a smile. It's good to have you back, brother. He took his leave from the Godswood after getting the last word in he needed. A screech from the dragons caught Jon's attention as he ran through the gates. He looked out to their nesting area and saw them growing more violent, so much that they might try to unleash fire on the other. He ran as fast as he could through fresh snow to reach the dragons. The ground was started to shake from Drogon's thrashing about, and the sound Rhaegal's voice was deafening to hear. Jon stood before them with his arms up, showing no fear to them, even though he could be crushed and killed. Enough! The three dragons all turned their attention to him. Drogon slowly crept forward and loomed over Jon. Being so close, the black and red dragon was like a mountain. Drogon lowered his head and snuffed smoke at Jon. Ever since his leg healed as much as it could, Drogon had been more aggravated than he already was. There was a large scar that looked like it pulsed with pain. Jon removed his gloves and reached his hand out. He lightly touched Drogon's snout. He could feel the turmoil within the dragon. Drogon was angry and afraid. The anger was expected, but the fear was something Jon never imagined this particular dragon to feel. It's all right, Jon assured the three dragons. It's all right. Daenerys is all right. Our children, your brothers, are all right. We're safe now. Jon needed to calm the dragons down as best he could, so he did what he would for Ygritte and Lyaris. Though the winds of winter blow, they will never scare the crow. Never shall we knock death's door. For the lands above we'll soar. When the king came striking down, our steel did break his crown. His touch turned all to ice. In the snows was his demise, and then the skies did fill with light. Our brothers have won the fight. The fires of the dawn had come, and the colds of winter undone. Then the one who was lost shall win, and the greatest of ages shall begin. When all finds peace in the end, the world forever will defend. The wolves will howl and the dragons cry. Through fire and ice together we'll fly. The anger and fear died from Drogon. His growling became a heavy purr of sorts. Even though his eyes were intimidating to look at, there was peace within them. He backed away and turned from Jon, taking a great many leaps before spreading his wings and taking to the skies alone. Rhaegal and Lyaris remained with Jon. He reached out his bear's hands and stroked the muzzles of their heads. I'm sorry for all this. It's my fault for thinking something like this wouldn't happen. I guess I expected too much from someone. He looked at Rhaegal deep in the eyes. I think it's time you had your share of the fight, Rhaegal growled out, before lowering his body for him to climb on. Stepping lightly until he was positioned and had a firm grip, Jon braced himself for flight. Valid! Rhaegal screeched out and began to jump forward, spreading his wings and flapping clouds of snow before taking flight. Rhaegal followed after them closely. The dragon soared low to the ground at first, flight just a giant's height above the camps, before climbing higher into the sky. Jon caught sight of Bran's ravens and Rhaegal. Sensed his intentions, he no longer had to warg into his dragon to fly. He finally had an understanding of the bond he shared with Rhaegal. On a horse, 20 miles would have been an hour's ride, but on a dragon, it was mere moments. Jon spotted a riding party of 30 men going over a hill on the King's Road. They took notice of Rhaegal and Lyaris and split up, but it wouldn't do them much good. The flock of ravens split into 4 groups and followed 4 of the riders, the four that had the swords. Lyra split off from Rhaegal and pursued the other horsemen. Jon began thinking of ways to defeat the riders and get the blades back. But instead, he decided otherwise. Better in no hands than the wrong's hands. He tightened his grip on Rhaegal as he began diving closer to two of the riders. Dracarys! Rhaegal unleashed his fire down onto the riders. The sounds of the men screaming were as loud as the horses whining as they were roasted alive. Rhaegal continued his stream of flames as he circled the ground. Doing this, he created a wall that steered another group from escaping. Rhaegar Ass, on the other hand, dove low to the ground and snatched a rider off his horse with her mouth, ripping through his armor and clothes, devouring him. Her presence frightened some of the other horses into grouping together, making them easy targets as she breathed fire on them. With the power and speed of the dragons, the riders nor their horses had any chance of escape. It wasn't long until the hills were littered with dying dragon fire, snow blacked by ash and soot, and charred corpses of men and horses. Rhaegal and Lycaeros landed in the middle of the massacre, but Jon did not dismount. Looking at it all only made him angry. Even if these men were not pursued by dragons, the Dothraki would have caught up to them. They had no chance, and still they tried, all for some swords. Jon's fists clenched hard at his side. Seeing it all made him feel dishonorable in a way, fighting the dead and the Night King. He never realized how easy it was for the dragons to kill, and he had two at his command. It went against what his father taught him. The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. Could a dragon's fire be counted as a sword if he was the one commanding it? Looking around, Jon could see what remained of the Valyrian steel swords, and it wasn't much. The dragon fire cooked the metal to the point of melting, and the scorched ground had hardened puddles of steel. They might be salvageable, but he wouldn't be able to do anything about it right now. Let's go home. The flight back to Winterfell was faster than it took to get to the hills. Rhaegal and Laerys remained in their nest, but Drogon kept flying in the skies around the castle. Jon informed Gendry of the fate of the swords, and later planned to have what remained retrieved and salvaged, if possible. Needing some time alone to think, and some time to clean his sword of the blood still staining the blade from the attack, Jon took to the Godswood again. Bran was gone when he came back. It was just him. Sitting at the foot of the weirwood, Jon ran a cloth down the blade, cleaning what little blade remained. His gaze went deep inside the black ripples of the steel. His thoughts drifted to when he fought with it for the first time. Throughout the battle, he could feel something about the sword, something powerful that both entranced and scared him. The way the blade moved in his hands was a beautiful thing. It did everything he wanted it to do. For a moment, I thought you father's ghost, Arya said as she approached him. He always seemed so calm when he polished Aesir, though I might give it a try. Arya sat down next to him. You don't seem calm, though. You seem sad. I'm not sad. I'm just tired of all this. How many more have to die for someone else's stupid desires? If you're tired, then maybe you should write to Cersei and agree to her demands, Arya said bluntly. She didn't mean it, of course, only to prove a point she was about to make. Men fight for others because they believe in them. The cunts who attacked us today believe that Cersei isn't the mad queen she is. But everyone else who fights for you believes that you're the one to lead them against her to free the country from shit like her. Are you going to betray their hopes in you? Jon shook his head. Never. He set the cloth aside and inspected the clean blade. Have you thought of a name yet? No, I haven't really had any names come to mind lately. How about something like Dragonclaw or Winterfire? Give it a part of what the swords that made it were called. Jon thought about it, but this sword was something else entirely. But his mind lingered on the use of winter. But that wasn't the entirety. A sword born in the longest winter since the long night. Jon took hold of the handle with his bare hand and felt a resonance in the sword. He felt he could hear something from the blade through the touch of his skin. He felt he could be the metal singing. It's called Winter Song. Winter Song? A menacing sword like that? Arya shrugged her shoulders. Could have been worse. But now that I say it, it fits. Winter Song. Jon got up to his feet and sheathed the sword back into the scabbard before tying the belt back on. Come on! I haven't seen your babes yet, and I want you to introduce me to them. Jon smiled, but it died quickly as Arya took several steps away. What's wrong? She asked. Rhaegar, I need you to meet me in the crypts tonight, at Father's tomb, and I also need you to bring the Hound. What for? I can't tell you yet. We may be alone, but that won't stop words from being heard by unwanted ears. Trust me, please." "I do," Arya nodded. Back in the Lord's chambers, Jon sat at Daenerys' side while she slept. He watched as Arya and Sansa would take turns holding Matthias. Aemon remained asleep, but earned the attention of Ashara Dane. Both of his children were dressed in the clothes Sansa made for them. Tyrion and Ser Davos took their leave to help prepare for the meeting, and would await Jon's arrival when it was to begin. Jon held Daenerys' hand in his as she slept. The feeling of her skin calmed him down. Aemon began to fuss as he began to wake. Jon left the presence of his wife and took his son into his arms, rocking him until he quieted down. As he sat back down, Jon failed to notice a hand reaching out to Aemon. Daenerys woke up just as they did. Jon smiled as she did. "Feeling better?" "Very much so." Daenerys sat herself up and leaned into Jon to look at their son. Aemon's silver hair began to show more, catching the light and reflecting it constantly. His eyes were pale blue of a morning sky, but they could change into Jon's brown or Daenerys' violet color after a few moons have passed. There was a knock on the door that caught everyone's attention before in stepped one of the Winterfell guard. "Apologies, Your Grace, but the meeting is about to begin." "Aye, thank you." "Meeting? What meeting?" Daenerys asked. Jon handed a men to his mother, and she began to rock him in her arms. "It's time for this war to come to end. The sooner the better. I'll be back." "Please be quick." "I will, I promise." Jon gave his wife a deepened kiss before he left with Rickon, Arya, and Sansa. The light of day was waning as they left the castle to the camps. The three of them were under the protection of a dozen Unsullied and just as many Northmen. But the meeting hall had more protection than ever before. 8 of the giants stood watch with large clubs in their hands, and lined up in between each of them were 20 Unsullied at attention. Inside was just as secure. Unsullied stood guard at the front of the seating for the lords in attendance, while Dothraki and Northerners stood guard over Jon and the Starks. All the lords except for those from the Westerlands, save for Ser Yaimi, were seated inside, many of them conversing with one another. There were some who were absent from the meeting, either dead or too injured to come. The Dornish and Northerners were especially riled. Lord Tyrion and Ser Davos were already seated at the high table, but arose when Jon and the Starks. Jon took his seat with Tyrion at his right and Ser Davos at his left, facing all the lords. Bran had arrived before they did and was seated with Rickon. "Nice of you to join us." Ser Davos commented, "Anything to report?" "Aye, some of the bodies that were found were identified as bannermen of houses Marbrand, Spicer, Lorch, Clegane, Lannister, and a dozen knights. But given that the Hound and Ser Jaime fought against them, I think it's safe to assume that these men were acting under someone else's orders." Unfortunately, Tyrion said, "any evidence of whom could not be found." "I already have a plan for that." Jon waited for everyone to quiet down before he stood up from his seat and spoke. "Today we have suffered from a great treachery inflicted on us all. Though a truce was made, Cersei Lannister saw fit to break by ordering many of those still loyal to her to attack and sabotage and thieve. But in those darkened hours, their lights of courage, loyalty, and selflessness, Lady Brienne, Podrick Payne, stepped forward. Both Brienne and Podrick looked confused as to why Jon would call them, but answered accordingly and stood before Jon and the lords of the realm. "The two of you have shown valor and bravery in a most crucial time. You protected the innocent against conspirators and traitors. You have both shown me more than enough to be what the realm truly needs. Draw your swords and kneel." Brienne bent the knee as she drew Oathkeeper and rested the tip into the floor as Podrick did the same with his sword. "Brienne of House Tarth, Podrick of House Payne, do you swear before the eyes of gods and men to defend those who cannot defend themselves, to protect all women and children, to obey your captains, your liege lord, and your king, to fight bravely when needed, and do such other tasks as are laid upon you, however hard or humble or dangerous they may be?" "Until my death, I swear it," Brienne said. "Until my death, I swear it," Podrick repeated. "Then on this night, I bestow upon you the titles of Knights of Westeros." Both Brienne and Podrick did their best to contain their joy to themselves. Podrick failed to hide a smile, but Brienne remained composed, but proud. "You may be seated." The two knights sheathed their swords and took their seats. Many who surrounded them cheered and congratulated them. "Your Grace," one of the lords called out as he stood up. "I'm afraid I don't know you," Jon admitted. "My name is Sir Beolar Hightower, Lord of Oldtown. My father fought and died against the dead, one of many fathers who did." While we were in more ways triumphant, there was still a loss. It has become known to us that Lady Maxa was murdered during the attack, and with her death, House Tarly has no heir, and the Reach no lord or lady paramount. I have taken the liberty of conversing. Forgive my interruption, my lord, but there's still a son of House Tarly. He sits right there. Jon pointed directly at Sam, the firstborn of Randyll Tarly and rightful heir to Hornhill. Your Grace, Samwell Tarly forfeited his claims when he chose to take the Black. His own father disowned him. He will never be worthy of the Red Hunter, I believe the words were. Who determines that worth? His father? You? There was a still silence. Of all the time I've known Samwell Tarly, he has proven to be a better man than most who sit in this room. And his worth? Sam was the first man in thousands of years to kill a White Walker. He has the qualities of a true knight and has served under the Night's Watch faithfully and loyally. The Night King and his army are defeated. I and Lord Commander Edison Tollett have released Sam of his vows, given that he has more than fulfilled them. Jon looked back at Sam. But I will leave the choice to him. All eyes turned to Sam as he stood up nervously. He cleared his throat and stood straight. House Tarly is not dead yet, and I will not shame my family's name like my father thought I would. I am Lord of Hornhill now, and I will lead my men to battle when called upon by the king. And I swear this to all of you. The Red Hunter of House Tarly will be seen at King's Landing to fight and win against the Mad Queen's army. There was an uproar of cheers for Sam. He wore a face of determination, but Jon knew him long enough to tell that he was nervous. Sam and Baelor Hightower sat down when things quieted down. Sir Camie, come forward. Jaime Lannister looked more nervous at this. He sat himself away from everyone as much as he could. Many eyes were filled with hate towards him, either for being the leading commander of those who attacked, or just for his family's name. Maybe even both. He presented himself before Jon. You above all have my thanks today. You defended the Queen and my children at the willingness to give your life for them. You are a different man than when you first came here, a man I would gladly stand beside in war. From this day until your last day, I hereby strip you of titles as Oathbreaker, Man Without Honor, and Kingslayer. You are Jaime Lannister, the Lord of Casterly Rock and the Westerlands and Warden of the West. Sir Aemon was shocked and also relieved, but not in the sense that something bad was going to befall him, but relieved of a weight on his shoulder. For more than half his life, he was shamed by all for betraying his vows to do the right thing. Your Grace, I thank you for this. Some of the hateful looks disappeared, but only some. Jon could feel Tyrion looking directly at him and caught a glimpse of him through the corner of his eye. Tyrion was just as surprised and just as grateful for this. I believe that men earn what they work for, and you have worked greatly for this. But now, I would ask that you stand beside me and judge those who not only betrayed a truce, but betrayed their rightful lord. Jon nodded to one of the Unsullied awaiting his signal, and it wasn't long after that the lords of the Westerlands and some of their generals were escorted inside and brought before everyone. All of them were disarmed and disrobed of any armor. Many of those who suffered loss this day shouted out insults to them. Oathbreakers, traitors, mad servants. Most of the Westerlands lords were angry while others looked afraid. Jon stood from his seat and walked in front of the accused, silencing the crowd. Some of you played a part in today's treachery. Some of you didn't. What I do know is that those who were responsible were following the orders of your queen, so I will extend this offer once, in the name of mercy. Any who admit their guilt may bend the knee and serve House Targaryen, or will be honored by the truce and allowed to return home with their armies or join with Cersei. But in doing so, they will be branding themselves as traitors and oathbreakers to their rightful liege lord, Sir Jaime. Any who do not admit their guilt at that time will be executed immediately when found discovered. Now make your choices. Many of the lords looked at each other, unsure of who was going to take the offer. Surely enough, 6 men stepped forward, but only Rhaenyra Rudiger and Arthur Payne bent the knee to Jon. Your Grace, Arthur Payne, an elderly man with a patch of white hair on his head, spoke. I only acted out of fear for my family and my house. Jon eyed the other lords. Anyone else? When no one else stepped forward to admit their guilt, Jon nodded, and the 6 men were taken aside by the Unsullied. Then your chance for mercy is gone. Jon looked back at Bran and nodded. Rolf Spicer, Bran spoke. Laurent Lorch Adam Arborin, Tytos Priester, he continued on to name several others, all of whom were shocked and taken off guard when they heard their names. When Bran finished, the Unsullied forced the named individuals to the knees, and those that were not were allowed to be seated. "This is ridiculous," Loren Clord shouted. "You have no proof." "A brother who can see everything at any time is all the proof he needs," Ser Jaime Lannister retorted to his bannermen. "Gavin Lannister," Jon called, not forgetting whose men committed theft. Two of the Unsullied grabbed a hold of a man with a great long golden beard and long golden hair. He looked well into his years until he was looked at up close. "You stand accused of conspiracy and involvement in the theft of Valyrian steel rightfully belonging to Gendry Baratheon. How do you plead?" Before the Lord said anything, Jon caught a look that passed between the Lannister brothers. He couldn't discern what it was until a confident look crossed Yaime's face. Then Davin merely shrugged, not guilty. Jon looked back at Bran and was surprised at the response. His men stole them, but he didn't order them. In fact, Cersei had no idea about the Valyrian steel. Those men stole them of their own decision. At that, Jon could hear the breath that Jaime exhaled. Obviously, he really hadn't been that sure of the truth. Now, however, he looked back at Davin as the man explained further. "If you expected me to ally with a mad bitch like her, then I'm not surprised, actually. But no, fuck her. I may be a Lannister, but I have common sense. And she killed my sister when she destroyed the Great Sept of Baelor. If my men decided to change their loyalties, say the word and I'll kill them all myself." Jon was surprised, as were a great many. "I didn't expect this, if I'm being honest. I'm a practical man, Your Grace. But don't get me wrong. If Lord Tywin was still alive and commanded this, I would follow his orders, because I respected him and had not a single doubt about what he did. But he's dead, and a rabid lioness now sits on the Iron Throne. I imagine that the longer she does, the sooner all of our deaths will come if we don't stand together. He honest at least. You would forsake fealty to her and pledge for me." Davin almost laughed out loud. "Promises from Cersei are like promises from a captain telling you his ship is the mightiest vessel to sail on the 14 seas when it's already sunk in water. That jape got a rise out of a great many laughs from those who watched." Jon studied the golden-haired man for any trace of doubt from him. "I will not punish for the actions of your men, but you are at fault for them getting out of hand. You may take a seat with the other lords." Davin bowed politely with a grin before being escorted away. Jon looked over to one of his guards. "Fetch a block and basket for the heads." "This is unjust." Laurent Lort spat. "A cripple simply saying so does prove that we were involved." One of the men broke into a sprint for the door, managing to get past the Unsullied, but the moment he set foot outside, a giant's hand reached down and grabbed him off the ground. There was a loud scream, but it was ended suddenly by a loud splat. The body was tossed back into the hall, but the top half was like a sack of loose meat. Some of the lords and ladies watching covered their mouths to contain their vomit, while the rest of the guilty began begging for mercy. Jon ignored their rabbles and began to draw his sword, but Jaime stopped him. "Your Grace, with all due respect, these are my men, my responsibility." "Sir Jaime, if I pass the sentence, then I must be the one to carry it out. That is the old way, that is my way." "I know, but I am just as much fault for today's treason happening. My father once taught me that if a soldier lacks discipline, then the fault lies in his commander. Say what you will about him, but the authority he had over his army was greatest in the world. If it pleases you, I shall sentence them and swing the sword myself." There was a glint in Yaime's eyes now, something of the man who had come to Winterfell all those years ago. "That is how you do it up here. The one who passes the sentence will execute it, in honor of your way and the way of your family and the way of your lands." Jon looked at him curiously. He was not wrong when he said that Sakyami wasn't the same. He nodded and stepped back, allowing Sakyami to take charge and responsibility. Sirdyami drew Widow's Wail and rested the tip on the floor and his good hand on the pommel. He looked back to Jon. "Which name shall I use for the sentencing, Jon or Aegon?" Jon would have once taken the question as a sneer, but there was genuine sincerity when he asked it. Jon never thought about this until then, but how would he be addressed as king in court and dealings of the realm? He didn't care personally, but he knew that it did matter. Should he continue on as Jon, former Lord Commander of the Night's Watch and King in the North, or as Aegon, King of Westeros and Lord of the Seven Kingdoms? "Kill the boy, Jon Snow. Kill the boy and let the man be born. Yoden. Sir Ibe nodded and faced those who betrayed the trust of many this day. In the name of Aegon of the House Targaryen, the sixth of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms and Protector of the Realms, I, Sir Ibe of the House Lannister, Lord of Casterly Rock and Warden of the West, sentence you all to die. Sir Jaime stayed true to his word and took the heads of every man who betrayed the truce. The swing of his sword was a strange kind each execution. His leaned forward and forced his body low, but doing that gave him the momentum and force he needed to take heads in one swing without the use of his right hand. The blood that spilled stained the floor, but was cleaned accordingly, and the bodies were taken away. After it was over, Jon let the hallway disperse and remained with his family inside. Sansas, Rickon, the two of you will be staying here in Winterfell to oversee the north. Our food stores are nothing but ash. I need you two to help replenish them and help keep order while we're gone. Bran, I need you to come with us. We'll need your abilities to form a battle strategy and root out any unwanted heirs. Bran nodded in acceptance. I'll also be leaving 500 men here in case Cersei tries to send an attack while we're gone. What about me? Ordia asked. I told you later tonight there was a sudden commotion outside that caught everyone's attention. Jon and Arya rushed outside as fast as they could and already found the Unsullied handling things. Sir Jaime was lying in the snow with a cut across his arm. It wasn't deep and bled lightly. Across from him, pinned down on the ground by Ser Bronn, was Tye Sand with a dagger. The Unsullied surrounded all three of them with their spears pointed down. Tye was struggling to be free of Bronn's grip and shouting out, "Let me kill him! Let me avenge my sisters!" Jon didn't know much about Tociane or the Sand Snakes, but he was told that the girls that were killed and brought into the castle were Tociane's full-blooded sisters. Bronn slapped her hard across the face. Listen here. I saved you because I like fucking you, but until I'm eating and fucking in my own castle, you don't get kill him. His sister doesn't get to kill him. Only I get to kill him. Jon stepped into the fray, and all eyes were on him. He looked to some of the Unsullied, take her to a cell and clasp her in irons. The Unsullied seized Tiane from Bronn and disarmed her of 3 other blades she had hiding in her clothes. Before they left, however, the sellsword grabbed at a necklace the young assassin and his would-be lover wore, yanking it away from her throat. He nodded his head, and she was led away. Best take a slug of this, my lord. The nick won't kill Yak, but I bet all the gold you owe that the blade was poisoned, he said. Jaime didn't hesitate to drink what Bronn gave him. Well, there goes your high-born beauty, bastard though she was, Jaime commented. Bronn merely shrugged. No doubt she's probably as good as dead now. But luckily for me, you owe me again for saving your rich arse. Bronn patted Jaime on the shoulder and walked away. Jon approached Sir Jaime while keeping his gaze on Bronn. I've met murderers and rapists at the Wall with more decency for life than him. I think he enjoys that about himself. I know it is what my brother does, Jaime told him. Then he smirked. But don't fall for the entire act. Under the greed, cynicism, and bawdy sense of humor, there is a sliver of honor to the man. Jon shook his head and looked at the wound Jaime took. Get that patched up, and then later tonight I need to speak with you in private. You and Brienne. Jaime looked confused. What for? I'll tell tonight in the crypts at my father's tomb. Yaxtew visibly shuddered. Ned Stark still had that effect on him, even with the blemish on his honor removed. Not the first place I would want to meet, but definitely not the last. James nodded and took his leave to find a maester. Jon returned to the Lord's chamber. Daenerys was with Missandei, and each of them had one of the babes in their arms. Both of the babes were asleep, breathing softly. I'm glad you're back, Daenerys admitted. I hope there isn't anything else to take you away from your children tonight. Unfortunately, just one more thing tonight, and then tomorrow I need to handle a would-be assassin. Someone tried to kill you? Shock and worry present in her voice. Not me, Sir Jaime. Tye Sand wanted vengeance for her murdered sisters. I almost don't blame her for trying. They were all just children. Jon felt his fist tighten as he sat next to her on the bed. After that, we need to prepare to march for the capital. It will take at least a fortnight. No, I want us marching in 6 days. 6 days? The sooner this war over, the sooner I can feel safe living. As long as Cersei is alive, I have to worry that a dagger is coming for your throat and our children's. If that were to happen, I won't let it. He felt a hand take his. I am your queen, Jon. I can take care of tying sand with Tyrion while you prepare for the war. But you need time with your sons. Have you even looked for the tiny differences between them, besides the obvious ones? No, Jon chuckled. I have not. Aemon has a slightly bigger nose than Matthias, but smaller ears, and Matthias tends to be quieter than his brother. She smiled down at Aemon in her arms, rocking him gently. Missandei stood up and passed Matthias to Jon. Shall I excuse myself, your grace? She asked. You may. Have a good night, my friend, Daenerys told her. Missandei smiled at the both of them and left. Jon wished he could spend the rest of his life at this moment with just them, but as the night darkened and the moon began to rise, he had one last thing to take care of. Within the crypts, Jon gazed up at the statue of his mother, the only image he had to know what she looked like. He memorized every part of her he could, regardless of how accurate it was. Am I the man you hoped I would become? Am I what you and Riker hoped for? He reached his hand out and felt the stone cheek of the statue, hoping it would give him some comfort, but it didn't. It only made him long for a moment with her just one so he could see her in person. Jon heard the sounds of footsteps approaching and left his mother's tomb and stood by his uncle's, though he would always regard Ned Stark as his father. Sir Jaime and Lady Brienne came into the light of Jon's torch. Close behind them was Arya and Sandor Clegane. Your Grace, Brienne said with a bow. Thank you all for coming, Jon told them. This war with Cersei has become too much. She's beyond madness. Whatever that is, regardless, it can't go on. As long the wildfire is under King's Landing, I can't march our armies to fight the sellswords, not while Cersei can give the order to have it ignited. The only way I see that we can win the war and save the city is if we kill Cersei before we make the attack. The only one who looked surprised by this was the Hound, but at the same time, he expected it. And since you're telling us it means we're the ones you're sending off to do it, I wouldn't ask any of you to do something I'm not willing. And I thought you wanted to settle the score with your brother. Sandor shook his head. I was hoping it would be on the battlefield. Fine, what's your plan? You, Arya, and Brienne will accompany me to Red Keep, while Sir Jaime will lead the armies to King's Landing. No, Jaime stated definitively. I cannot be the one leading the army. Jon was going to protest when Sir Yi went on. I know what you are thinking. This is not the honorable move to sneak into the city and assassinate a queen, but you are willing to do it yourself, sully your precious Stark honor. Jon's face must have given up his thoughts, because next the knight said, It is not a king's job to do it, and you are a king. Besides, it won't work. You're expecting them to honor things, like rules and codes, just like Ned Stark did before he unexpectedly was sentenced to death. If you try to kill Cersei, you'll no doubt raise alarms, and if you kill her or not, you will get captured, and you would be the perfect hostage against those who've bent the knee to you. If we can kill your sister before you arrive, then there will be no need for a battle. The sellswords will have lost their contractor, and will have no choice but to surrender. So we do it when our armies arrive, Arya suggested. Empty the city of everything Cersei can throw at us, and then make the kill. That'll work, Amy agreed, but not if he is there. He pointed at Jon. If Cersei is told that the king is not at the head of his own army, she'll suspect something. There was a bitter silence. I'll go instead of you. Sir Jaime, Brienne said. I don't think that is wise. It's wiser than you think. I know of passageways hidden in the walls of the Red Keep. I used to use them to meet with Cersei. We can sneak through, and while everyone is focused on the dragons and the Dothri, and soldiers of Westeros, he paused in his words, almost ashamed to say what was next. We kill her. It's not right unless I'm the one to do it. Jon objected. Yes. As we've established tonight, the one who passes the sentence and so forth. I respect the traditions of my king and North. But Cersei isn't in, nor of, the North. He looked to the ground now, as he came to a grim conclusion. She is my sister. I will see the job done. I doubt you will, Arya argued. So if you don't, I will. I have more right to kill her than any of you. She was one of the first names on my list. But if Jon wishes it to be done your way, then I will honor that. All eyes fell onto Jon, waiting for his say. He took a deep breath to prepare himself for his orders. Then I charge you all with bringing justice to the false queen. Cersei Lannister under the command of Sir Jaime Lannister. Vaincy! With the new orders issued to the armies, everyone was pulling 3 times their weight to prepare for the march on King's Landing. Yaxame, however, found it difficult. Even though the possessions he would be taking with him ahead of the armies were very few, he had his own battle going on within himself. Almost all his life, everything he did, every action he took, was for Cersei. He stayed Kingsguard to be with Cersei. He murdered dozens for Cersei. He sacrificed everything he had for Cersei. But then she betrayed him. Then she killed their child. And now here he was, meant to be preparing his things to go and kill her. It's not like he hadn't killed his own kin before. He killed his cousin, Alton, trying to escape Robb Stark. Then again, she wasn't free from that sin as much as Tyrion was. She killed Uncle Kevin and cousin Lancel when she destroyed the Great Sept of Baelor. They were all a family of kinslayers. It would still be a long wait until nightfall. The king was kind enough to grant those leaving a day to prepare. Jaime waited by the window, looking out to the camps and the ruined parts of the castle. The camps were bustling with people going to and from places like a hive of ants on their hill. The castle was still being searched for anything salvageable from the wildfire, although the efforts of that were probably to be in vain. "I see that the king's brooding has rubbed off on you," Tyrion said. Jaime turned and saw his brother walking through the doorway. "Before you go, would you care to join me for some wine? I have some left over from a little celebration after the battle at the Wall. Perhaps wine would do good for his mood." "That sounds like a wonderful idea." Jaime followed Tyrion to his room and wasn't surprised when he found Bronn and Podrick Payne waiting for them. "Ah, the heroes of Blackwater Bay. Such an honor for you to grace my lowly brother and me with your presence. If anyone's gracing our presence, it's the Knight of the Magic Cock, or are you the slayer of mermaids now? I've seen him with the Manderley girl more times than once." Podrick turned bright red when Bronn mentioned that. "Sir Podrick," Tyrion said snidely, "do you give us details?" He retrieved a horn for himself and Jaime. "Copious details." He poured some green wine and took a drink. "My lord." Podrick straightened himself. "Her name's Willa." "Willa Manderley, the one with the green hair?" Yamelin inquired. "She's a pretty young thing." "That she is," Bronn agreed. "But how is she in the bed?" "I swore not to tell, and I am a knight now, so I will not forsake my promise." He smirked at all of them and took a drink of the wine. "However good she is, you can't adornish a fucking. They do things you've never imagined possible." Bronn looked disappointed for an instant, almost regretting that he lost his Dornish bride. "Cheer up, Sir Bronn," said Tyrion. "I've convinced our king and queen to wait until Sarla Sand arrives from Old Town. I sent the Raven last night, and we should be receiving her by the next full moon. Pod, if you could get the good knight's payment." Podrick smirked as he rushed out the door with a jump in his steps. "There's not enough gold in your dried-up mines to compensate a Dornish woman that knows how to fuck like her," Bronn retorted as he took a swig of wine. "The mines are not dry," Tyrion replied. Annoyed, "I had someone look into places my father never bothered with, and it proved fruitful. The veins that were found could possibly last another 100 years, and I plan to have Castamere emptied of the water. My father flooded it with those mines rivaled Casterly rocks and have as much silver as they do gold." "Castamere." Bronn leaned in with an interest. "Now that's a mighty castle when it's not flooded with water and corpses of Reens. Don't you already have a castle? The twins will make you a rich man?" "Never really liked the Riverlands, and twins are surrounded by swamps, shit, and rivers. Castamere, on the other hand, has fields, hills, and mines, and if I recall, you owe me for saving your arse." "Again, he does owe you," Traxon agreed. "But luckily, I am willing to help support this debt with something you might find worth just as equal a payment." Podrick returned with a sword in his hands. It was of the same shape and design of Bronn's original before he lost it at the Blackwater, but this one had flaming arrows carved into the guard and the twins in the pommel. Bronn stood up and inspected the hilt. Handle's a bit wider than before, but the rest is the same. Only problem is, unless you have 1,000 more castle-forged steel swords, there's still quite a debt to pay. That sword is castle-forged, but this steel is far more valuable than just 1,000 swords. Bronn was confused until he drew the blade out of the scabbard and beheld a Valyrian steel blade. His eyes widened as he removed the rest of the blade and held the sword in his hand. "You did say you always wanted one, if I recall," Jaime told him. "Oh, aye, but I did. Not my first time holding one, though." "What will you call it?" Podrick asked. "Magic Cock, after you." Bronn jeeped. Don't worry, Pod, just a joke. This sword shall be named after our good friend, the Hand of the King and Queen himself. Tyrion scoffed at Bronn. If you ever name a sword after me, wouldn't it be better for it to be a short sword? You think too little of yourself. I wasn't going to call it Impslayer or Dwarf's Revenge or anything like that. I had a different name in mind. I just can't remember it. He twirled the sword in his hand fluidly. What was it that angry town crier called you when you were hand to Joffrey? Oh, please, not that. Demon Monkey, that's it! Jaime was in the middle of sipping his wine, but hearing that made him spurt it out and choke on laughter. His sword shall be forever known as Demon Monkey. Oh, how I hate you so. Tyrion chuckled with everyone else. Bronn sheathed Demon Monkey back into its scabbard and set it against his chair. The real beauty, certainly worth much of what you owe me. Yet, why is it I feel that debt continue to grow so often? I wouldn't say that it grows, it simply evades you. Tyrion set his horn aside and looked firmly at Bronn. But in this case, you could say that the debt is about to grow. Our esteemed Lord of Casterly Rock will be unavailable for the battle, and unavailable to lead the loyal forces of the Westerlands. And how many are they now? The most of the sons of the men the king executed are packing to go home or join Cersei, leaving you with less than 10,000 men. Even a couple of the Reach and the Crown lands are stupid enough to go with them. Yes, we have lost a considerable force, but we still outnumber Cersei. 3-1. Not to mention that Brandon Stark will be assisting with the strategy, thwarting any attempt of traps Cersei may have been laying for us. And we have 3 dragons and 24 giants. Oh, I have no doubt who the victor of the battle will be. All I want to know is what's in it for me. Figured you all would have known that by now after saving your golden asses more times than either of you have saved mine, which to my count has been never. Never, Jaime asked. What about when I negotiated your release from Dorne, or when I smuggled you out of King's Landing the day we left? As long as Doran Martell was the prince, I don't think anyone would have been executed for what we did. He was a spineless man, and you just took the credit, and I had several other people to turn to at the capital. You just happened to be closest, and I repaid that debt at getting us horses and safe passage with the Dothraki. I don't think anyone would count being taken prisoner as safe passage. Yet we made it all the same, unharmed and without spending a day in a cell covered in our own shit. For fuck's sake, must I teach you rich cunts how to do everything? As long as we keep paying you, why not? Tyrion slyly remarked. As long as the payment is given. As for letting your armies, I don't think the loyal lords will take kindly to following a riverlord over their liege into battle, so better for them. If I were a fellow lord of the Westerlands, wouldn't you agree? Tyrion almost looked surprised at the logic in that. That is true, but you have already been appointed the Lord of the Twins. And I can easily be appointed Lord of something else that is just as good, or in my case, double. Double? That offer was for switching sides specifically. What was it you once told me about money? I give you some, and after a certain time, you return it with interest. The Riverlands are too cold in the winter and too muggy in the summer. The Westerlands, on the other hand, are right in the middle. Warm summers and tolerable winters, and since you already plan to refurbish a castle for its riches, I'll consider that a favor for all the delays. You want Castamere? Jaime asked. A man like you ruling over a mine, that's far too much paperwork for swordsmen like you. But just enough wealth, that's my price for my castle. As for the bride, I'd prefer to keep the one I have, but if it can't be helped, I want a Dornish woman. Tyrion sighed out after taking a long, well-deserved drink of wine. If you lead the Westerland forces and defeat our king and queen's enemies, I shall see to it that Castamere and a high-born beauty, well-skilled in a bed, shall be yours. Rune stood up with a smug expression and held out his hand to Tyrion, who shook it with a hint of agitation. Give me those, and your debt to me shall be paid. Finally, Ymir remarked, Don't get too relieved just yet. You still have to deliver. Bronham patted Jaime on the shoulder. Come on, Pod. Show me how a knight of pain fights. The two of them left the room with their horns of wine, leaving Jaime and Tyrion alone. He is a greedy bastard, Jaime snarked. Greedy, but loyal. Opportunistic to the fullest if he can get something worth getting, no matter what the deed is, Tyrion replied. As long as there's his gold or something worth more, he will always be a sellsword. Do you know what he said to me once when I asked if he would kill a babe if ordered without question? Knowing Bronn, he probably asked how much. Tyrion took another drink of wine. I hope any children he spawns are better than him. Jaime shrugged. I think you would miss him if he disappeared. He does have a certain, I don't know what you call it. The two Lannister brothers shared a laugh together. The company they kept to was a strange one for the sons of Tywin Lannister, but it was unique and that's how they liked it. Have you almost finished packing? Tyrion asked. Almost, Jaime replied. I suppose you know of the plan then. I do. I was the one who suggested it, but I didn't expect to learn that you would be one of the few going. Better than the king going himself. Whose idea was it to send him? This revelation surprised Tyrion. Himself, I'm guessing, the plan was to have Arya Stark be the one, since she, above everyone else, deserves to take Cersei's life. Yes, well, she still will if I can't. There was a sullen pause. Ever wonder how amazing it is we talk about the murder of our sister so casually? If I'm being figurative, she was never my sister. I've wished for her death more times than I've wished for anything in this world. But I will admit that I hope that after this war, things will start to change for good. I don't imagine that this will be the end of all wars, but I can imagine that there will be peace long enough to last a few generations. Father did say that whoever comes out on top would establish a 1,000-year dynasty. Jaime noticed Tyrion's shift in mood. He remembered that day in Beneath the Red Keep when they met in secret. Jaime nearly chose to strike Tyrion for mentioning their father. Tyrion, our family is a complicated one. That's the most understated thing I've ever heard anyone say. Yaxley wanted to object at first, but he wasn't wrong. Listen, I still can't forgive you for what you did to our father. I ever will. But I don't hate you for it anymore. I even understand where it came from. Tyrion was at a loss for words, or rather he struggled to find them. Maybe Cersei was right. If I hadn't killed him, Myrcella, Tommen, they might be alive. The regret was plain on his face. For that, I'm sorry. Maybe, but they're dead now. Nothing we can do to change that. Jaime had accepted their fates long ago, but he couldn't deny that longed to hold his children in his arms one last time. It's getting late, Tyrion commented. You should probably finish packing. Yes, I think that would be best. Will you see us off? Tyrion nodded before Jaime took his leave and returned to his room. By the time the winter sun had set, Yaxley was heavily dressed in furs for the long nights of riding he would be doing and tying his things to his horse. However, it was proving difficult to do with one hand, but luckily Brienne was kind enough to assist him. Are you ready for this? Brienne asked. Ready to ride day and night in snow and ice to the most dangerous city in the world, or ready to kill the sister I came into the world with, that I did so much for in our lives, or at least try again for that matter? Both. Jaime merely shrugged at her. We shall see, won't we? Though I'd prefer sailing. But as long as Euron's fleet was keeping watch of ships from the north, now one would be able to slip by unnoticed. And with the theft of the Greyjoy ships anchored at Torrhen's Square, the two naval forces would be evenly matched. Theon and Yura had a few dozen more ships than their uncle, but Euron was the better captain and commander. But if the winters here are still easier than the ones beyond the wall, I'm sure we'll manage. It's been a long time since I've had to camp. Might be some fun before we all could die. Brienne rolled her eyes at him before she finished strapping on Yaime's things to his saddle. She returned to preparing her own horse alongside Arya and Clegane. Arya had fewer things than Jaime and Brienne had, but Clegane's massive horse carried a bastard sword, an axe, his armor, and would soon be carrying him too. The king was saying his farewells to Lady Arya, and oddly enough, Lord Samwell Tarly was with him to see off the hound. What was even more surprising was when Lord Tarly gave his family's Valyrian sword to him for the journey. However, he made sure to distinctly tell Clegane that he wanted it back, from what Jaime heard. Gendry Baratheon had come as well to say farewell to his wife, and he too had a Valyrian sword to give. This one was a Bravazi water dancer blade, and it was nearly identical to the one she already had around her waist. I was hoping to give it before the battle, but I guess it's now or never. Lydia removed her sword belt and the sword she already had and replaced it with the new one. Now she was armed with a Valyrian sword and a Valyrian dagger. We're going to call it, the king asked her. Arya grasped the hilt of her sword and moved her fingers down the leather-bound handle over the pommel engraved with dire wolves. I think I'll keep it as Needle. Clegane scoffed at her when he overheard them talking. Yes, I'm a cunt for naming my sword. No, just a cunt who can't think of anything else than one name, he said after strapping Heartsbane to his back. Arya ignored his comment and gave her husband a deep kiss. It's a far better name than Demon Monkey, at least. Jaime thought before he noticed an approaching silhouette in the darkness. Appearing from the shadows came Tyrion. I suppose this is goodbye, then, he confessed. Maybe, but if everything goes right, it won't be yet. When has anything ever involving Cersei gone to plan? They chuckled together at the truth of that. Jaime knelt to his brother and gave him a hug. Hopefully the next time we see each other, it will be at a well-deserved victory. Even if it's not, I look forward to that day. Jaime let go of his brother and mounted his horse, as did the others. The king stepped forward to address them all. Ride along the King's Road until you've reached the Crownlands. After that, you'll have to take caution of watchful eyes. Bran informed me that there are fewer spies watching near Maidenpool and Duskendale, and whatever happens, don't die. That's a command. He nodded to all of them, and Arya was the first to spur her horse through the gates, with Clegane following her, Brienne after him, and Jaime in the rear. The four of them rode into the darkness of the cold night with only the light of a half-moon to guide their way on the road to King's Landing. The air bit at their faces as they began their task to kill a queen. Sansa, the day of departure had finally come. Though the men who remained loyal to Cersei left 2 days prior, all who would fight for House Targaryen were nearly ready and waiting for their king to lead them south. They would be marching through snow-filled roads with the free folk at the van to lead them, given their abilities to travel through snows faster than any other men. Even so, it would be a month of traveling on such roads, and there would still be many falls of snow, whether light or heavy, that would obstruct their travel in cold temperatures that could prove too much for some to fight through. The hills around Winterfell began to look less crowded, once again, with the tents taken down and men organizing into battalions to march. The Dothraki and the Free Folk, however, were still scattered about like a crowd, rather than uniform like an army. It was only hours until they would be emptying the surrounding lands, all except the garrisons staying at Winterfell. There were only several thousand Northmen in the Northern Army, and most of them were still young men whose only battle was at the wall, or old men who were almost at the age too weak to fight. But even so, they were Northmen, and they could defeat 4 times their number in winter combat. And this time, things would not be the same as when Robb marched south. This time it would dragons and lions fighting with the wolves against the evil in King's Landing. But while the soldiers prepared for war, the small folk continued to repair the damage that was inflicted. Masons worked stone and mortar to rebuild the parts of the castle the wildfire destroyed. First, they had to break apart the melted stone before they could lay new ones. It would be months before the castle would be fixed, possibly a year given the number of workers that they had available. Sansa sat next to Rickon in the Great Hall. The wall across from them was gone, and braziers were brought in to give heat. I'm afraid we just don't have enough of the material to work, the representative of the Masons informed them. He was an elderly man who was as old as Serod Rudrick before his death, and travel to the quarry would take a fortnight just to bring back enough for a day's worth of work. Rickon sat up straight in his seat. Is there any other way to get the work done at a good pace? More men would help, but not by much. We would still have to clear the quarry of snow and mine the stone. The mason was right. To at least get things started, they would need material ready to be used. Sansa spoke up. If you could acquire a source of already refined stone for a moon's turn, would that be long enough to prepare the quarry to be regularly mined? I think so, milady. Sansa turned to Rickon. Isn't there a pair of abandoned towers in the Wolfswood to the north? Aye, Bran and I stayed there when we fled. What if we had the towers salvaged, and while they are, we send some men to begin work to mine stone? There were many structures and buildings empty of residents, and standing empty in the snow was serving no one. Rickon looked at the mason. Would that work? But we will still need the men. I'll send a raven to the White Harbor for help. Until then, gather the other masons and a handful of the guard for additional assistance and protection should you need it. Thank you, my lord. We will work as hard as we can to restore the castle. The mason bowed and left. Any more? Rickon asked the guard standing by the door to the hall. Lord Greyjoy is awaiting an audience, the guard standing by the door announced. Sansa's mood shifted ever so slightly, hearing that there were still so many mixed feelings she and the rest of the Starks had towards him. She nodded to Rickon, who told the guard to show him. Theon walked in, followed by a familiar woman with a babe in her arms and a little boy trailing behind her. Lord Stark, Theon greeted. Lord Greyjoy, or shouldn't you be called King? Until Euron is dead, I am only the Lord of the Iron Islands, but I plan to have Yara become the queen. I was hoping you could grant me a favor, or rather, grant her a favor." He gestured to the woman next to him. She stepped forward and gave a curtsy. "This is Bella and Theon." "Your son, I remember him," Rickon replied. Bella looked confused, as did small Theon and Sansa. "Pardon me, me lord, but I don't think my son's ever met you before." No, we haven't." Rickon had told Sansa of his vision of Theon and Jon at Flint's Finger. "It's complicated," Theon whispered to Bella. He stepped forward. "I'll be straightforward. If Yoren manages to defeat the Iron Fleet, he'll go raiding and pillaging. I don't want him anywhere near the sea if that happens. Please grant them permission to live here." "I can work, me lord," Bella said. "I can cook and clean." "You and your son are welcome to stay here as long as you need," Rickon told them. "And you are a guest here," Sansa added. "We will not require it of you to earn for your stay." Bella curtsied to both of them. "Thank you, milady." "Thank you, Sansa," Theon added. Rickon looked over to the guard. "See to it that Bella and her children are given a room. At once, my lord." The guard escorted Bella and the children outside, but Theon lingered still. "If that's all," Rickon said to Sansa, "I'm going to go wait for Jon." Rickon left on his own, and Sansa got out of her seat and approached Theon. "I'd been meaning to ask, but was that babe in Bella's arms your sister's?" Theon nodded silently. "Yara told me to leave her at an orphanage, anywhere but near her. But I couldn't. I'll just keep her out of sight." "Have you named her yet?" Theon shook his head. "It's not that I can't think of a name. I just don't feel right doing it. But I feel even worse to ask Yara to. I mean, how can I ask her to name the child created from our uncle raping her?" In a way, Sansa could try to understand Yara's feelings. She felt terrified when she had her moonblood in King's Landing, always being afraid of the day she could have to bear Joffrey's children. She wasn't sure if she would be able to ever show love to any child she had with golden hair like his. She didn't want the matter to weigh on Theon longer than it was. "Will you be joining your men at Eastwatch?" "No, Yarcasso will be commanding them, and we'll regroup at an island near the Fingers. Then it's just a matter of waiting for the order to attack or for Euron to attack us. Either one won't run away. Not again." Theon looked more determined than Sansa had ever seen him be for years. Ever since he was tortured and mutilated, he had looked afraid to do almost anything, no matter how little it was. "You know, you're starting to remind me of your old self." "I am? You just seem more whole." Dane smiled just a little. "I was broken into 1,000 pieces, and then broken again. But fighting the dead and rescuing Yara, I've been able to rebuild myself. And having Bella and our son, having them heals the scars, gave me." Theon didn't need to say who he meant for Sansa to know he was talking about Ramsay. "I'm happy for you, truly." Theon eyed her curiously. "Have you been able to?" Sansa was silent for a moment, too long at that. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ask." "No, it's all right. I just don't have an answer. Or rather, I don't think I can. I can't forget what he did to me." "It's not about forgetting, it's about accepting." The Seereth shivered in place for an instant. "He tortured me beyond anything I thought possible, made me something less than a man. But I'm free his pain now. Yachia, Bella, my son, they all helped me piece myself back together. Not into Theurgia, but someone else. Someone better and stronger." He looked at her with a fierceness in his eyes, similar to Jon. "What is dead may never die." Hearing him say all that comforted Sansa in a way she didn't expect. It gave her hope. "I admire you for being able to Theon, but I think it will be some time until I can start on the path you did. Mine is different than the one you need to find. But if there is one thing I know that will help you come to a place of peace, it is to have those you care about surround you. You still have your brothers, Arya. Now you also have the Queen." Theon paused for a minute, a queer look in his eyes and his manner guarded. And perhaps Lord Dane. "Edric, why would you say that?" His question not only caught her off guard, but also made her defensive. When he answered, she detected something of the foster brother she remembered, the one who would tease. "I have seen how you were there for him and his children when the bodies were brought in. How close you two have become since the attack." She shook her head vehemently. I was just acting as the Lady of Winterfell." He didn't seem to believe her protestations. "I've seen you when you're with him. You look free." "Whatever you think I was feeling, I wasn't. I have spent time with him numerously, but But he brings something out of you when you are something you used to be, something that helps you heal. Theon paused and looked spoken out of place. I'm not saying you need him, but I'm not saying you don't either. But at the least, you deserve something to wipe away the ugliness the world showed you. Sansa was feeling cornered, and she didn't know why, but she never got the chance to give Theon a reasonable response. I have to go now, Sansa. I hope to see you again soon. He left her only with a smile that was almost a smirk like the ones he used to give before everything changed. Sansa wasn't sure what he was trying to get her to do. Was he trying to counsel her or get her to confess that he was right? As much as she wanted him to be, she couldn't let herself be like that. She enjoyed Edric's company, but going further than that would only cause problems. She couldn't make the same mistakes that Robb made, but given how things were, she wouldn't be able to find a chance. Edric was still distraught over the death of Nila, and it would be beyond dishonorable if she were to try and get closer to him than she already had. Sansa shook the feelings and thoughts from her. It was nearly time for the armies to leave, and she was going to see off Jon and Bran before they left. She went outside and found Rickon over at the royal caravan with their brother. Breen was being seated in a covered wagon when Sansa joined him and Rickon. He saw them and looked slightly annoyed at himself. I can warg into almost any beast, but I still can't ride a damn horse, he admitted. I believe you will be able to one day, Sansa told him. Things just happen to be in poor timing for you to get the chance. Perhaps when the wars are over, you can finally focus on something else than having visions. I don't just focus on the visions now. I'm getting better at closing my eyes to them for other things. Whatever it is, I'm glad you're back to being yourself again. I missed you. Me too, Bran smiled at her. Appearing from behind the cart was Mira Reed. Wagon's all ready to go. Are you? Yes, just waiting for Jon to lead the way now. You're going with them? Sansa asked Mira. Just to the neck, then I need to go home to give my father a proper burial. The ravens began to caw out and flutter in their cages on the sled behind the wagon. These were not of the flock Bran would control, but the ravens that were to be used by the lords and ladies to send out to the holdfasts of their lands. There were already some ravens sent out by many ordering more men to be mustered and sent to their castles to defend against more treachery or schemes by Cersei. But I'll be sending a host of men to garrison Moat Cailin, Mira told them. The north will not be taken again. Thank you for all your efforts, Mira, Sansa told her. I wish you luck in your travels, to both of you. We'll be all right, Bran assured her. The road is clear of danger right now, and we'll have an escort of thousands of men. It doesn't hurt to have dragons either, Rickon jepped. No, it does not, Bran agreed, smiling as he spoke. It warmed everyone to see him like that again. Well, Jon is almost outside, so I suppose this is farewell for us. For now, brother, Rickon said. Yes, said Sansa. But when you get to King's Landing, make sure Cersei knows that winter has come for her. Bran nodded before Sansa and Rickon left him in his wagon to go and wait with Daenerys and her children to see their brothers off. Jon appeared from the castle dressed in his cloak and a coat of leather with a scale texture and red trimmings. He was embracing more of his Targaryen heritage. On his head was the crown he was gifted on his wedding night. Following vigilantly behind was Ghost, fully healed and stronger than ever, along with Ser Jorah and Ser Will. Additionally, to the Kingsguard was Lane Fenn, who was knighted and offered a white cloak for his bravery and skill for defending Daenerys. Unlike his new brethren, however, he carried no sword, only a pair of axes at his sides and a castle-forged three-pronged spear. Besides them in the king's company, Tyrion and Missandei were following behind. Tyrion would be vital to the negotiations if they were to happen, and Missandei would be needed to both act as a counselor and translator for the king. She had knowledge of many of the sellsword companies and met their captains and commanders when she was a slave. Jon approached his family to say his goodbyes before he was to lead the army south. First, he went to Daenerys, who was holding both of their children in their arms. I promise I'll come back this time. Alive. I know you will, Daenerys replied, but there's something else I want you to promise me. Make sure you show Cersei she has no hope to keep the throne. Let her know that winter has come for her with fire and blood. Jon nodded and gave her a deep kiss and then 2 lighter ones to each of his sons. I'll see you too soon. He stepped to Sansa and Rickon. The next time we see each other, things will finally start to change. I promise. Sansa and Rickon both hugged Jon tightly, and he them, even with a superior force. Sansa couldn't help but worry that something bad would happen, if Jon would be the same when they did see him again. Tyrion approached Sansa and bowed to her. My lady, despite the events, I thank you and your house for their hospitality and honor you have shown. I hope that perhaps one day I will be able to repay it in kind when we're both not surrounded by schemers and tyrants. You have our gratitude, my lord, and consider this repayment for your kindness and protection in King's Landing. Tyrion smiled at her warmly and stepped over to Daenerys to say his parting words before joining Missandei to a warm carriage while the others mounted horses. Jon left with Ghost and mounted atop his horse. He gave one last look to them all before spurring his horse through the gates. He was followed by his king's guard and men behind carrying Targaryen and Stark banners. Moments after, the ground began to shake and thousands of hooves outside the walls sounded like thunder as they followed after the king to war. After the sounds and the vibrations died, the dragons screeched out. Their wings appeared over the walls before their bodies followed, and they took to the skies to follow after the armies. But the number of dragons leaving was strange. Rhaegal and Lyaros were the only two flying. "Where's Drogon?" Sansa asked. Daenerys just as confused. "Would you hold the babies, please?" She handed Matthias to Sansa and Aemon to Rickon before she hastily walked out through the gate. Sansa and Rickon walked onto the battlements to see what was happening. Daenerys approached the great black and red dragon with no hesitation. "Drogon?" she called. The dragon was curled up, resting in the snow. "What do you think's wrong?" Rickon asked. "I don't know," Sansa replied. "Maybe the wound on his leg hurts too much." Daenerys continued calling her dragon, but he would not take flight. He even snuffed at her when she grew angry. Eventually, she gave up and returned inside the castle and rejoined Rickon and Sansa. "What's wrong with him?" Sansa asked. "He doesn't want to leave. A grown dragon is acting like a stubborn child." Daenerys took Aemon from Rickon, but I do sense from him that there is more to it than that. I just can't figure out what. Dragons were strange creatures indeed, as strange as dire wolves. Matthias began to fuss and cry in Sansa's arms, so she began to rock him back and forth. "He's probably hungry." "They both are. Would you bring him to my room?" "Yes, of course, Rickon. You should get back to your practice." "All right, Sansa. I'll see you at supper." Rickon left to train his swordsmanship, while Sansa and Daenerys went back inside the castle. Matthias was the first to feed from his mother. While he did, Sansa rocked him on in her arms to settle his fussing down. His eyes were starting to darken ever so slightly from the baby blue color, with the beginnings of green. They would probably keep changing to match Jon's eyes, just like Matthias's were starting to show traces of violet, like his mother's. Aemon grabbed a hold of Sansa's finger and squeezed it softly. And being in her arms made her feel calm in a way she hadn't been for a long time. She also felt a little bit of envy in her, but she didn't want to accept that she did. "He has a strong grip," Sansa commented. "They both do. They'll be as strong as Jon when they grow up." Daenerys smiled down at Matthias as he coughed lightly at her breast. A memory made Sansa smile, and Daenerys caught her look. Jon was strong when he was young, even though he was smaller than most boys his age. And when he was sparring, he'd regularly beat Robb. Did he? Somehow, I am not surprised. Now, it was Sansa who gave the look and her good sister who supplied the answer. When we had our first private conversation, Jon made mention of disliking something he was best at. He was referring to his skills with the sword. Before we retook Winterfell, Jon and I met face to face with Ramsay Snow, Sansa began, not dignifying that monster with his legitimized name, gifted to him by another bastard. He had heard of Jon's abilities with a sword, even if he was modest about them. Dany seemed to agree. His modesty did stand out to me. When he was defying my rights as queen, he never phrased it as anything personal to him, but to the North as a whole. Being raised a bastard taught him that. He never wanted to stand out, never wanted anything that would draw the attention of my mother. Jon has never talked about his childhood much, Daenerys said, but I can imagine it was hard for him to have been an outcast. My mother was cold to almost all the time, and so was I. He was always sulking when he was alone until it turned into brooding. But whenever he was with Robb and Arya, he was happy. Robb was the only one of us who could coax a smile out of him, and Arya, they had a connection almost from the moment she was born. He was a good brother to us all, even if my mother never chose to see it. There was a moment of silence until the Queen sought more information. "When did you learn about his death at Castle Black?" Daenerys asked. Her voice had hints of being uncomfortable, asking the question. "Shortly after I arrived. He told me about the dragons and then the mutiny, but I never saw the scars until he was turned into one of those things. The memory of seeing Jon with eyes like ice and screeching inhumane noises made her shudder. I never saw his scars until we both imprisoned on Pike together. He could have shown them to me when we first met, and it would have outweighed everything I said to him, all the things I went through to get to where I am, but he didn't. I think he aspired to be everything my mother said he was not. He's the most like our father than the rest of us. It's ironic, Daenerys said. Thinking on it now and understanding just what my father was, the same could be said of Viserys. He wasn't the best of people, but there was a time when he was a good person. Then men promising him the throne poisoned his mind and made him arrogant, idiotic, and finally cruel to the point that it pleasured him. Daenerys finished feeding Aemon and set him down in his crib. And then he threatened to cut out my child from my stomach and leave it with my first husband. That was the point I couldn't see him as my family anymore. He was killed with liquid gold poured onto his head, and I did nothing to stop it. Sansa thought she would be shocked to hear such a thing, but she wasn't. Surprised maybe, but she had seen enough death and pain in her life to expect such things to have happened. But what frightened me the most? I almost reveled in watching him die like my father did when he burned people alive. I didn't know the truth about him then, but now it makes me think that I'm more like him than I thought. You're one of the farthest people from your father that I can possibly imagine, Dany. The closest person is Cersei, and you're nothing like her. That may have been the way you were, but it's not who you are now. I don't believe that you will become that type of person, and I know that Jon will not let that happen either. A person can change more than think, given enough time. When I was a child, I never imagined to be the queen I am now. In fact, I don't remember what it was I saw myself to be, but certainly not this. I imagined that I would be a loving queen to Joffrey and have his many children. Now being a queen is the last thing I want. Everything I wanted as a little girl was dreams of things that were just stupid delusions in a world that doesn't exist. Our dreams are only delusions to us, if we chose them to be. I didn't let that kind of thinking stop me from rising into a queen to fight for my homeland and my family. Daenerys took hold of Sansa's hand, comforting her. And you shouldn't let it stop you. After the babes had fed, they were fast asleep in their cribs. Each of them slept alone, but Daenerys had the 2 dragon eggs placed in their cribs. Aemon had the red and orange one, and Matthias had the ash-gray egg. They babes looked at peace with their eggs. But the peace was broken by the sound of crying. It wasn't the babes, but a little girl. The sound was coming from the hallway. Out of instinct, Sansa left her seat to investigate. She followed the noise to its source and found little Ashara sitting alone in the hallway, sobbing in her arms. Sansa knelt down and placed her hand on Ashara's back. Ashara? Ashara didn't respond. She only kept on crying. It broke Sansa's heart to watch her like this, so she took the little girl into her arms and carried her back to Daenerys' room. "Is everything all right?" Daenerys asked when Sansa returned. Sansa merely shook her head at her. She sat back down and started to gently rock and shush Ashara. "It's going to be all right." "Papa," Ashara squeaked through her tears. "He doesn't like me anymore." This shocked both Sansa and Daenerys. "Why would you say that?" Sansa asked. "He shouted at me when I went to see him." Ashara's grip on Sansa tightened. "Did I do something wrong?" No, you did nothing wrong. In fact, he's the one who did something wrong." Sansa couldn't believe what she just heard. It didn't matter that Edric lost his wife. Why, for any reason at all, would Edric behave in such a way to his own daughter? "Dany, will you watch her, please?" "Of course," Daenerys said with a warm smile. "Where are you going?" Ashara asked. She was finally starting to calm down from her tears. "I'm going to go see your papa." "Are you going to hurt him?" "No, I'm going to make him apologize." Ashara hopped out of Sansa's arms freely and was wooed by Daenerys to sit with her on the bed. The two of them began talking when Sansa left them, feeling glad that Ashara had stopped crying, but also furious at who she was about to go see. When Sansa arrived at Edric's room and entered, she saw him leaning on his bedpost, barely holding himself from collapsing to the floor. There was a wineskin spilling there, and given that the spill was small, determined how much was consumed. "What do you think you're doing?" Sansa demanded. "I need... to get ready for war. I need to ride out." Edric tried to stand independently, but slipped and fell to his knees. He screamed out and grasped at his bandages. The noise was noticed by a guard nearby, and he rushed into the room with his sword half drawn. "Is everything all right?" Sansa turned back to the guard. "Send for Maester Wolkan, and some water." "Yes, milady." Sansa removed her cloak and set it aside on a chair before helping Edric back into bed. He was still drunk and quite resistful of her, but even then, she forced him to lay down. "Is there any wine left in the pouch?" he asked, annoying her greatly. Not once since she entered had he inquired about Ashereth, but she did pick up the wineskin to see if there was. She felt the weight of what remained and dumped it out with the rest of the spilled wine. Not anymore. It didn't take long for the guard to return with the maester. He removed Edric's bandages, which were now starting to be stained in Edric's blood, to examine the damage done while a servant accompanying him brought water for Edric and cleaned the wine from the floor. "You'll be all right, your wounds are still healing." The rash movements let some blood slip between the sewings. "It happens from time to time. Make sure that you make gentle movements from now on, but stay in bed and make sure you rest easy for about a day. I can give you milk of the poppy for the pain." Edric never made eye contact or looked at the maester. His eyes were stuck on the window to his room as he shook his head. "I don't want the damn milk of the poppy." "I thought not," Maester Wolkan replied with a roll of his eyes. Every master probably heard that refusal more times than there were houses in Westeros. He wrapped Edric in some clean cloths and excused himself along with his servant. Sansa remained, though. She still needed to address his unacceptable behavior to his own daughter. "Why would you shout at Asher of all times?" "You're still here?" Edric's words were slurred as he lay in his bed. "Could you at least bring me a drink?" "There's a goblet of water next to you." "Fuck water. I want wine," Edric growled. He was being more stubborn. Rosier used to be as a child. Though she knew the rage that came with the murder of family, she wanted to starve herself to death after hearing of the Red Wedding. Joffrey had done everything he could to remind her of it before his death. Tyrion and the Tyrells were the only ones who tried to give her comfort. But even still, he didn't excuse his behavior. Sansa pulled her chair next to Edric's bed and sat down. "If you stop being an arse while I talk, I'll consider giving you something besides water." He did not respond, so she kept on speaking. "You may have lost your wife, but your children lost their mother. They lost one of the only people they truly know that they love, and they have no idea what to do. They need you. Leaving them alone will only make it worse." Edric half laughed at her. "And what would you He ended that phrase. Just before finishing it, he seemed to sober of a moment. "Of course you would know. Your father was executed before your eyes. And your mother and brother butchered with no one but a dwarf's shoulder to cry on." I cried. "I admit that I did, but I had no one to cry with. I chose not to have anyone because I hated everyone around me. I would lay in bed, imagining those I lost and how they died. I was alone and scared. But your children won't have to be. They need their father." Edric scoffed and finally turned to look at her. "I'm not their father. I'm just the same stupid boy who chose to fight for glory instead of taking my place where I was meant to be." His annoyed attitude began to turn into sorrow. He showed it on his face, but even more so in his eyes. What kind of father leaves his wife alone when she needs him most? "I failed as a husband." "But you haven't as a father. You can still show them that this isn't the end of their world." "But it is, isn't it?" Edric asked, his voice laced with sarcasm. "Mayhaps not at the hands of the Night King, but there is still a war we may not survive. And if we do, what do we have left?" He sat himself up slowly, being face to face with her. "My home is gone, burned into rubble. My people slaughtered while I was away." Sansa didn't notice her hand taking his. "You have your children, and you have your friends and the love they have for you. That's more than most, yes. More than I got when I thought I lost everything." Edric looked upon her silently. The violet in his eyes seemed to glow in the light of the room as the day faded. But the more Sansa looked at him, she kept realizing that he was in just as much pain as his children. "It's not the end of your world. It doesn't have to be unless you let it." Sansa never realized when it happened. Edric had leaned himself to her and began kissing her. But what surprised her more than the spontaneousness of it was that she wasn't fighting back from it. She let it happen. Edric finally realized what he was doing and pulled away. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." Sansa didn't let him finish. She felt a great desire for more of what he gave her, and he didn't resist. In fact, for their next time, Edric deepened their kiss together and pulled her closer to him. It was like he needed this from her. It caught her off guard for a moment, the movements he made. Perhaps in the end, that was the first step to weaken her defenses. But it was the little thing, the gallant knight kissing the hand of the fair maiden like in the songs, that allowed her to allow him to continue. He had a look in his eyes she could vaguely remember seeing in her own mother's eyes when she would look at her father. How Ned Stark would take Catelyn Stark's hand and kiss it gently. She had thought at one time that Joffrey would look at her that way, that he'd take her in his arms and carry her off to their chambers. But now, seeing Edric look at her, she wanted from him what her father gave her mother. She did not know how it happened, but for some reason their lips remained connected and parted, their tongues in a dance together. Then slowly he moved down her neck, gently caressing the length of it, while his hands moved to her back, working at the ties at the back of her dress. There was a moment of fear that seized her, remembering Ramsay in the same situation, but he was dead, and this man with her now. She shocked herself when her own fingers worked the laces of his trousers. She could feel him here, anticipating what was to come. By the gods, she wanted it too, if for nothing else than to banish the ghosts that still haunted her within the walls of Winterfell. She knew a proper lady should not want this, but she didn't want to be a proper lady now. Edric was right. This could be the end of the world. They could all be killed in the war to come against Cersei. And here was a man, a broken man, who needed something to ease his wounds. If she could offer him any comfort, even if it was merely with her body, she would. It dissolved into the shedding of clothes, skin on skin. She knew she should fear these actions, but as to why, she could not remember. Their bodies eventually made their way to lie in the bed as they eased down. In the miasma of their state of minds, somehow they were gentle with Edric's wounds, but the passion grew fiercer until they seemed to both fall over the edge together. And then Sansa remembered nothing else. The chill of a light breeze came in through the window onto Sansa's face. She shivered lightly as she slowly woke up. The cold never bothered her much, however, the breeze making it sudden did. Despite that, though, she felt warm inside herself, warmer than she had been for a long time. She shifted in the bed, groaning as she felt the furs warm her body and wanted to return to the bliss of sleep. She was still halfway there, but she started to become aware that she wasn't in her nightgown. She was completely naked, what shot wide awake when she felt another naked body in the bed and saw Edric asleep next to her. She remembered their talk last night and what it led into. Thinking on it now, she was in absolute shock of what they had done. She didn't know how to react. The only thing she felt right now was the regret of all things. She shouldn't have kissed him and definitely should not have slept with him. At first, she wanted to blame it on the wine, but Edric was the only one who drank it last night. She herself became drunk in merely the pleasure and lost herself in him. Careful not to wake Edric up, Sansa slipped out his bed and dressed with all haste. She froze when Edric stirred around, but was relieved when it was nothing more. She couldn't confront him about this yet. She felt like an idiot right now, who just took advantage of the moment last night. Lazily clothed, she rushed out of the room, but cautiously, so that no one took notice of her. She had to retreat to her room, and she most definitely needed a bath. Her hair was oily, and her skin smelled of sweat, and she felt a dry, sticky sensation between her legs as she walked. She made it to her room thankfully unnoticed, and immediately began to undress from her gown and into a nightrobe to not arouse curiousness or suspicion. When her servants were to arrive for their duties, she was lucky to wake up this early. The light of dawn was beginning to reveal itself, and soon the people would be too. Sansa got in her bed and tried to relax and collect her thoughts, but the only ones running through her head were about what an idiot she was. Indulging herself like that was beyond foolish. A night of pleasure could create years of problems. Her immediate concern was how would Edric see this when he would sober up. She began to remember what happened in the night, what they did and how much she enjoyed it. She couldn't deny that she did, but she could accept that she went through with it. Before Sansa realized how much time had gone, her door was knocked on before her handmaid walked in. "Good morning, my lady." She began to gather Sansa's used clothes as Sansa started to pretend to just wake. "Shall I have a bath drawn for you?" "Yes, please do, quickly." Warm waters were brought and set, and fresh clothes laid out. The handmaiden took the sheets off the bed to wash as Sansa stripped down and stepped into the water. As she wiped herself clean, she couldn't help but wish that she could wipe the guilt she was feeling. But the more she thought about it, it wasn't guilt she was feeling, nor regret. She was starting to feel nothing in that sense, and it was worrying her. She was dressed by sunrise and already breaking her fast with Rickon and Daenerys. She didn't speak to them, which was making things strange, as an awkward silence dragged on longer than it should have. Rickon finally cleared his throat and brought the attention to something at least. We received a raven from White Harbor. They have an overabundance of fish and will be bringing most of their catch to help with the lost food. That's wonderful news, Daenerys said. Has there been any word from the other keeps or holdfasts? Aye, but only a couple responses, and they are rather far from the north. Lannisport has some food they are willing to sell. They're asking for more than I think they should, but what choices do we have really? Not many, I'm afraid. Perhaps we can acquire harvest from the Free Cities or the Bay of Dragons. What do you think, Sansa? Sansa wasn't paying attention. In fact, she hadn't touched her plate. Her head was still caught up in what to do and what would happen. Sansa, Daenerys placed a hand on her shoulder, which finally snapped her out of it. What? Forgive me. I wasn't listening. I have a lot on my mind right now. Like what? Rickon asked. And where were you at supper last night? It doesn't concern you. Sansa kept her gaze away from Rickon, but felt a different pair of eyes looking at her. She lifted her head back up for a quick glance. Who saw it was Daenerys. Her eyes felt piercing, and they could see past the mask that Sansa was trying to wear. Sansa, Daenerys said calmly, how long did you spend at that? You went to take care of last night? With that question, it was obvious that she knew. Before Sansa could answer, the castle was shaken by a loud roar of dragon from outside. Everyone's attention was drawn to the windows looking over the courtyard. People were scurrying around, many running and screaming at the roar of the dragon. Drogon swooped down from the sky, nearly crashing into the castle. He began to circle around and started to fly in place and roar out. But the way he was acting was like he was angry, like he was yelling rage instead of breathing fire. What is he doing? Rickon exclaimed. Daenerys had already left the Great Hall to go outside to confront her dragon. She walked into the center of the now empty courtyard and started shouting at her dragon, giving him commands in High Valyrian. Drogon perched himself on the walls that were still intact and lowered his head to his mother before letting out another great roar. But Daenerys held her ground and didn't so much as even flinch. After that, the dragon merely gave what could be considered a scoff and took back into the skies. He wasn't leaving, but he wasn't keeping near the castle any longer, which was good. 7 hells, Rickon let the words fall out of him. Anyone who could stand their ground to that deserves to rule. Sansa was going to agree with him, but she was at a loss for words to do so.